Welcome, everyone. You are here at DX Transform. We have got a jam-packed session for you where you're going to hear from industry leaders, real thought leaders who are going to be bringing a lot of insight to you. You're going to be hearing from peers who have been in the trenches just like all of you. But most importantly, we're going to be hearing stories about real, tangible change that have made differences in so many different businesses. Can't wait for you to experience it. I'm going to be your moderator today. My name's Liz Miller. I'm going to be here with you through the whole thing. Can't wait for you to experience it. So without any further ado, Gary, I'm sending this over to you.
Good day, everybody. Hello, my name is Gary Schock, and I am the Global Go-to-Market Leader for our Customer Experience portfolio, of which we're here to talk to you today about HCL Digital Experience. I am joined with my good friend and colleague, Becky.
Hi, Gary. I'm Becky Creighton. I'm a Regional Sales Director for HCL Software and a Product Software Specialist for Digital Experience Platform.
Well, Becky, we're really excited to kick this event off today. We have a lot to share with you, and we really wanted to start with really positioning and explaining the value and the investments we've been making in HCL Digital Experience, but moreover, how those investments are being applied. And we really think about digital experience, it's so much more than delivering a website, than delivering just branding and content and images. It's really about taking serious action in serious moments that matter, that really are important to you in your life. And I really think, Becky, this is really the premise of our entire story.
Yeah, absolutely. When we're talking about what's that customer experience, employee experience, and what's that platform that can help deliver that experience to the digital experience to customers and to employees, and the benefits the companies will get from that.
Yeah, and I think really this is illustrated in our first point, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So why can't I see content specific to me? Really, why can't we see content specific to our customers that come to our site, or even our visitors that come to our site, and the employees that are using your platform as well? And when you talk about content that's specific to you, it's personalization. It's bringing that personalization to that person so they feel connected to you. And when somebody feels connected to you, whether it's a customer or employee or a prospect, they're more likely to come back and continue to use your services or your product. So that's really important, and being able to have that segmentation, which the platform can do, to drive that personalization, to present that content that's specific to that person coming to your site.
Yeah, Becky, spot on. I think even when you add to that point of it's great to personalize that content, but really what we're talking about on top of that is adding to that rich information and processes, access to those processes to take serious action at a moment that matters for you, a life event, whether that's having a new child and you want to add them to your insurance, or whether you're getting married and you're looking at life insurance now, or whether you're dealing with a government agency, you're trying to take some decisions around how you're going to pay your taxes. When you're dealing with major life events and moments that matter, you need a platform of trust. You need to establish that trust with a technology that's going to give you that personalized content that you expect.
Right.
But on top of that, access to the systems that are often behind the login that you need to be able to take action to solve the problem you went there to do.
Yeah, and it's not just for the customer, it's also for the employees.
And that is what's often overlooked, isn't it?
It is.
Why are employees overlooked in this process? They're no different than a customer. And if you really think about the gains you could get by enabling your employees to be able to solve for critical problems at moments that matter. Let's talk about one. We have energy companies out there that really are handling things around disaster relief and really setting up their teams to be able to go out and handle things around wildfire problems, with electrical problems, to flooding events. They need to activate those teams and give them access via digital channel, the information they need to interact with federal government agencies, state and local government agencies, down to citizens and communities to take decisions, mobilize, and take action. You need more than a website to do that. That's the power of what digital experience does. You think beyond that, the grocery business, so much changed, unfortunately, due to COVID.
Right.
The policies and procedures and the training you need to give. We run some of the largest grocers in the world who use this portal, this technology that we have with HCL Digital Experience, to get the information into store managers' hands, employees' hands on policy, procedure changes, and now with supply chain issues, how to handle stocking shelves differently. You need to do that digitally. You're not going to have a call center for that. That's where HCL Digital Experience really shines.
Yeah, and when you really look into that, like you were talking about, like the energy company, right? And if there is a natural disaster or even a disaster like a fire, like you don't want your employees having to search for the information to be able to do their job. You want that, it's critical. It's not a nice to have. It is critical that they get that information at the right time and delivered to them when they need it. So when we're talking about this, like, let's talk about what happens with you build trust.
Yes.
How do you do that? Well, as a company, you know, building that trust is like your privacy, your data, your personal data. Look, we all know there are serious cyber attacks happening all the time. And are you able to keep that customer's data secure? Are you able to keep your employees' data secure? So that is at most important.
Yes.
Then know me, right? We've been talking about the personalization, the segmentation. Like, know who I am. Make me feel like you want me to be on your site. And how do we do that? You break down the silos, Gary.
Yes.
We break down all those silos, those disparate data silos, and we can put them all together so that it's one view, or it's a very easy solution for your customer to see, a very easy dashboard, something they can interact with. And then empathy. Empathy's hard to do it digitally, but you can do it. And we have customers that are doing it now. And when you put all of that together, that produces trust.
It fundamentally all starts and ends with trust. And by trust, we mean really trusting that when I go there to this experience, I can take this decision. I really have superpowers, fundamentally, to solve the problems I need to solve at that moment that matters. And then beyond that, the tools and the technology and the platform need to be able to operate as one platform to do all of this. And that's where enterprise-grade HCL Digital Experience solves for that problem, whereas many clients that we run into have 3 or 4 or 5 different content systems that they try to stitch together and then stitch together all these integrations. Back to your point of the silos and breaking down the silos. One technology platform that can do all of that, that's what we're here to do.
Yeah, when you can break down those silos, it's magic, right?
It's magic.
And think how happy your employees will be, or the ones who are working on the content and the portals and those data systems, where they're just like spending hours and hours and days like coding, and when ours is out of the box.
Exactly. And I think that really lends ourselves to the next point that we want to make, which is, okay, so all of this is done connected DX, right?
Right.
At the end of the day, that's the problem we're trying to solve for here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what we solve for.
And we do solve for that. And how do you do that? How do you create that world-class digital experience, digital transformation? Well, first and foremost, you have to understand the needs of your customers, your prospects, and your employees. And then how are you going to deliver on that experience? And when you can deliver on that experience, can you meet or exceed their expectations? Exactly. And you have this loop, right? And then all of that does actually produce a better digital experience for the customers, the employees, and for the companies.
It does. And again, as I mentioned earlier, COVID has sort of driven this expectation now. This loop is cyclical. The expectations, used to be firms were getting disrupted because of, let's say, Uber has come in and changed the entire economy with how maybe a firm might operate. And so that disruption was happening now with firms coming up with new ideas and bringing them to market. But that disruption now has come from citizens, employees, and humankind that are expecting now to be able to have access to these processes, to take action, to self-service. It's a fundamental expectation, and companies that don't address that straight out of chute really are going to find themselves falling behind. And when you look at the technology choices made in years past, those were to really build websites. What you need is a complete and comprehensive digital experience, and we're finding this with government agencies, to banks, to healthcare providers, to energy companies. They're all coming to us with this same challenge. I need to bring on board 1,000 business processes now.
Right.
How do I do that?
How crazy is it for you to have to mail in a doctor's bill to get reimbursed? But it's
crazy.
happening today.
It is.
Right? And it doesn't need to.
Yeah.
So when we can bring all of these systems together, right, we have one dashboard that we can show, right, to your customer.
To solve that problem.
Right.
But I think there's a fundamental point here that really has to be expressed, and that's really our next point, which is there is a gap that has to be bridged here. So we've talked a lot about moments that matter and handling them, and we've talked a little bit about this idea of, okay, what do you mean by business processes? Well, let me explain it one level down. So there's touch points, obviously, all around us digitally in terms of how we want to interact with a government or a bank or any entity at all that we deal with every day. So that's fine. There's also this notion of really these front stage things, which is all about the experience. And the way I like to describe it is This is, when you put touch points and experiences surrounded by content, that's really just an experience that's happening to you. But when you bring forward your organization and operations and the business processes that are locked behind the login, things like my banking records, things like my healthcare records, things like my physician interactions, things like my Medicare or Medicaid enrollment or activation, or things like dealing with unemployment benefits with government agencies or paying taxes. I mean, I could rattle off forever. Bringing those processes forward is the backstage part that is so essential for consumers to be able to take action, or employees to take action. And this is where we differentiate. With experience is what happens to you. Engagement is when you bridge this gap, powered by HCL Digital Experience. Engagement then becomes a choice. It becomes, you understand me, you know me, you're helping me solve for my problem at that moment that mattered most.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, you do that, you are now trusted for me to interact with you over and over and over again, not call the call center, or if you're a healthcare provider, if an open enrollment comes along and goes, I'm going to switch to this provider and go away from you because when I went to your site, I couldn't solve the problem. I was on hold for 3 hours.
Right. And then when I got on hold, I had to spend the next 15 minutes explaining what was going on.
Who am I?
Who am I, right? Having those journey analytics, which we can offer as well, to be able to help facilitate when that customer calls in, that it's not this painful reliving of why I spent 15 minutes on your site trying to do something and I finally got to the last end and then I get an error code. Right, so now, with Journey Analytics, that's easily solved. And the other thing when we're talking about the backstage, right, and the front stage, is the amount of investment HCL software has been making. 525% increase in resources in the last 3 years has really produced a world-class digital platform.
Without a doubt.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think to our next point, and I think we've got a great example that we've built called Woodburn Health.
Yes.
This is now we're not a healthcare company, just so you know, so don't try to subscribe on this URL. But seriously though, how does this come to life and bring it to life? And I think, Becky, we really researched this. This just isn't some mocked up demo.
Right.
This is a formalized, thought out design.
Right.
That we solved for, and we were expressing to clients throughout the United States now and taking it around the world. Take us through it a little bit.
Absolutely. So here we have a dashboard. We have our fictitious patient is Larry. Larry has a sleeping issue. So when he logs in, right, we know who Larry is. There's his customer information, everything he has, who his doctors are, and he's getting his help with sleep apnea. And then on his dashboard, he has my prescriptions, my claims, my physicians, any messages that are important that he can really come and just look at and go through his benefits and his healthcare reminder. You have an appointment coming up, you need to get your booster for COVID, vaccine, etc. And then he comes over and he's like, maybe I have some questions. So there's a chat bot that's integrated with this dashboard. And then he also has his personal relevant documents. This is personalization. This is like show content that's relevant to me. So since Larry is, has a sleep apnea issue, he's got a CPAP machine, they talk about exercise. These are all relevant documents and articles that are specific for him that the system, that DX is pulling from multiple systems. So when we take a look at this, it's like now Larry only has to go one place to get his information. He doesn't have to go to 5 or 6 different places, right?
It's complete.
It is complete, and he doesn't have to spend his time doing that and his aggravation. You have to go to 5 or 6 different places to get all of this from your healthcare provider. It's frustrating.
Yeah, and I think the power of the technology and really where it comes to life is we're unleashing Larry's superpowers, as we like to call it, to solve for a real need, a real issue. Sleepless nights, loud snoring, and a very upset wife. It is what it is. And so he needs to solve that problem. Doesn't want to get on the phone, wants to do his own research, wants to go to a trusted place, his healthcare provider. Last thing you want to do is Google search that. You want to go to a trusted place. So we're unleashing the superpowers for Larry to take his decisions and actions. We're personalizing the content, not just in the articles he sees, but we understand Larry. We understand his medical details, his medical records. These are electronic medical records. He's opted into all that because it's a trusted platform, it's private, and it addresses all the regulatory concerns as well. That's why you need more than just a website. You're not just going to go to some random website to go research this. If you do, I highly discourage it. It's better to use a trusted source.
Yes.
And that's really the pressure that many of these firms are facing today, that we're working with them to bring these designs forward across not just healthcare, but as I mentioned earlier, government, banks, financial services, of any kind. They want to solve that problem.
Yeah, and the dashboard is great, but for the sake of what? What does this actually produce? So we've talked about what it produces for Larry, the customer.
Yes.
What's it produce for the companies?
Well, if you really think about it, it's 3 core points, right? Obviously, improving efficiency. The whole notion of superpowers and giving Larry those superpowers is to improve his efficiency to more rapidly interact and solve his or her, in this case, his problem. But when you think about it too from the practitioner side of the healthcare provider, unleashing the superpowers for the content creators, the digital authors, basically the process engineers to bring forward those business processes. You get to write those integration patterns to bring those processes forward once. They're reusable across the experience. You don't have to spend millions to literally custom code those integration patterns to bring forward medical records, to bring forward their prescriptions. We can do all of that in one spot. And so being able to aggregate those 2 things together and bring front stage and backstage together, we can improve efficiency of the customer experience and drive innovation. And that when you drive innovation, there we're talking about giving tools that you can drive better search outcomes. You can use appropriate levels of AI and ML to support search results, to bring up the right articles at the right moment that mattered based upon his or her research level, that what they're looking for. Being able to bring those 2 things together and innovation is something we're constantly focused on. So not only do we work with our clients in terms of requirements, but our own innovation factory is in place that's looking for the next gen experience because of the demands consumers are placing on these entities, these firms. And last, this is all fundamentally about one thing: driving shareholder value, driving growth. And so every single client we work with, doesn't matter what industry, the number one question they ask is, these other 2 things are great, but how does it solve for that problem? And that's exactly what we can address directly with these solutions.
Continuous development, our resources, right? We're putting out enhancements every 6 weeks. And so when we look at that, how does that happen? We connect, we collaborate, and we communicate with our customers, with employees internally. And so as a customer that's sitting out there, or a prospect that's sitting out there, they're like, well, how is this going to affect me? Well, it affects you because when you have somebody who's connected with you, when the company you're doing business with is invested in you, then you feel like you're trusted and you feel like you have the trust for them, right?
Exactly.
And you have that loyalty now to them. I want to keep going back to that website or use that service or that product because they've demonstrated. They know who I am, they keep my data private, and they are continually looking to improve. And they're doing that through feedback, right? So when you engage and interact with the website knows, right? And the back-end systems are collecting that data so that they can provide more information to the customer.
And there's a lot to be said. We hear this in the industry. We provide this in a cloud-native way. The way, and we'll have another discussion topic on that later at a panel, but I think from our point of view, what's compelling about that is that it's giving clients choice, not just how they deploy this technology, but moreover, how they want to treat their data, that they get that same enterprise-grade software that lets them decide exactly how they want to deploy it to solve their regulatory concerns, and more importantly, what their customer expectations are.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point is like, not only is that, HCLDX being able to provide this digital experience, this world-class digital experience, it's also working with governments, right, and healthcare and banking. I mean, these are industries that need secure data, that need their systems to be up. And one of the things our customers say to me all the time is, it just works.
It just works.
And it has for a long time, and it will continue to just work.
No question, and unleashing superpowers. And I think we've got a couple examples of this, of where we've driven some growth.
Yeah.
The outcomes we've seen with our clients, some of it's pre-COVID, some of it's post. But most of decisions have been taken with considering the fact that the expectations of the consumer or the end user is dramatically shifted. In our first case, we've seen tremendous growth with a firm that provides mortgage loans and does loan origination. Their number one challenge is a boom in loan processing requests and refis and new mortgages, especially with interest rates where everybody knows where they've been. And the firm just can't hire enough call center people to do this. So they explicitly went down a design path of figuring out how to automate and drive self-service customer care through the very long journey of processing a loan and getting all your information into the system and giving a really robust, seamless, prescriptive digital experience surrounded with content, all behind a login, where I can trust I'm going to provide my financial background, my taxes, all my details, so you can figure out which loan makes sense for me. And at the end of the day, we've helped drive really a huge increase in conversion rates for this particular client.
You know, when you talk about that and you're talking about the self-service aspect, I mean, everybody knows, like right now, hiring employees and hiring educated employees, right? Everywhere from, it is tough, right? And so if we can decrease that need to hire other people that is proving to be very difficult and put it in the hands of the consumer to fill out the mortgage application, that's a huge win for everybody. It's a win for the company, the bank, and it's a win for the consumer because their loan's getting processed faster.
Yeah, and we really like to make sure our clients understand and our prospects that this integration work is not easy, but is made easy with what HCL Digital Experience does. My whole career, I've used many different technologies to solve this problem. One of the reasons I came to HCL to run the software business here around customer experience is really centered around this technology works at enterprise grade. And if that works at enterprise grade, think of what it can do for you. Even if you're small, medium business, it doesn't matter who you are. When clients are making decisions around the problems they want to solve like this, they aspire to hit these numbers. It doesn't matter if you're a 10-person firm, 15-person firm, to a 1,000-person firm or 25,000, whatever the number is. You aspire to grow. So short-term decisions don't yield to these long-term gains. And I think another great example we'll give you here is around a large oil and gas manufacturer in the downstream sector in fuels and lubricants. And their fundamental problem was people are just used to calling their sales reps or agents to be able to process orders and take orders and transact. And there's so much lost opportunity with that. And when you think of this company, and we're talking hundreds, literally around 100 countries plus, you've got different cultural dynamics there. Think about the call center teams you need to be able to support those local markets. Well, this is primed and perfectly set to have and set up around a digital transformation strategy. But that's so overused. They didn't need to create this massive $100 million digital transformation project. What they simply needed to do was look at the requirements that their consumers were expecting, their buyers were expecting, do some brief studies there. And all we had to do was bring in our solutions to support the end-to-end order-to-cash process and surround that with a digital experience that imparted the knowledge needed at the moments that matter for that B2B buyer in Bangladesh to Singapore to somewhere in the United States. And that buyer could be at a major airline company down to a large retailer that's selling fuels and lubricants, generally lubricants in that case. And so when you think about marrying that up, you combine those two things, a tremendous savings is imparted. So not only do we improve efficiency with the solution to the previous point we were making, but we brought innovation to the table rooted in a design to solve a specific problem, gave a great frictionless experience to this client, and they're expected to see not just growth in revenue, but upwards of $30 million in savings a year because they can handle these transactions online. And it's a complex level of engagement. This is not just simply a website. And I think the last example, and really another good one, back to banking and financial services in this case, we drive some of the largest banks in the world with customer self-service and care, not just retail, but wholesale banking and small medium business banking. And we're seeing a huge amount of growth and conversion rates of really B2B companies engaging with these sites to be able to solve large, complex, and make those banking decisions through our digital experience. Again, imparting the right knowledge at moments that matter for them to take the decisions they want to do, and then letting them transact, take action in that experience. This is more than a marketing website, way more. We can do all the front stage work with robust content, and you need that. It's expected. Back at your point of Amazonification.
Yeah, it's table stakes.
It's table stakes.
It's to be able to present all of that data and that information in an easy way and being able to transfer that work to the business user, right? So in marketing, you don't have to reach out to IT every time you want an update, right? And have to wait 2 weeks to get that new paragraph put in there. They can do it now.
They can do it now. We unleash those superpowers to let those content authors and those people be able to use our new, modern, innovative tools to provide and create the right digital assets to quickly get those assets at scale into a site, hundreds of different combinations that personalization can then drive, which creates the experience, and then the engagement, or within the moments that matter, the engagement being now a choice, that choice is actually brought to life in a trusted way by being able to take action. And at the end of the day, that's what digital experience is all about.
Absolutely, and for DX to be able to have that platform to do that, where you can take the data silos and put those together easily out of the box, and help if you need it, right? Our support teams are world class. And in the front stage, to be able to develop and have a beautiful interactive website that knows who you are, right? Because at the end of the day, we're all social beings, so let's be able to connect, collaborate, and communicate with our customers and employees.
Becky, perfectly said. I'm so thrilled you joined us here at HCL Software.
I love it.
It's an honor to have you as part of our team. And I know we have a lot of new teammates that are with us.
Yes.
It's just been a real pleasure to kick off this event with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gary.
For sharing your experiences and time with us.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Hi, everyone.
Good to see you.
It's good seeing you guys. Okay, let's have some fun. Let's dig in, right? Okay, so we're talking digital. We're talking transformation in that kind of chocolate and peanut butter moment. It seems like we can't talk about those two things without talking about cloud, right? Bum, bum, bum.
Yep, there it is.
But there's a funny thing, I think, when people start to talk about cloud. We have a really set definition in specific stakeholders' minds about what cloud is, what the value is. It's just not a common definition of what cloud is. So I wanted to kind of try to bust through that, and I figured you guys were the perfect people to have this conversation with. So let's talk about the value of cloud when we talk about digital experiences, right? What is the value for the stakeholders as opposed to just for IT? Right, so for the business, what are we talking about? So I'm going to start with you. I know, I'm going to put you on the spot right now.
Just on the spot. Well, I think the business value comes to, in the cloud with cloud native solutions, that there is a level of confidence that comes with knowing that your systems are going to be up and running. There's business resiliency to that, and you're building out your brand trust. And let me just give you, for example, statistic here. 60% of the 7.8 billion people in 2020 were online. What did that do to the website? Huge, right? 40% of organizations found spikes in their traffic more than they do see seasonality-wise.
Right.
And some of them fell down, right? They couldn't handle that amount of traffic. And so we did a SaaS Path survey at IDC, and it shows 70% of organizations will prefer a cloud-native solution in order to continue that business resiliency. So confidence is key in driving a lot of organizations.
And that's a huge point of value, right? So when we're talking about defining that value for the stakeholder, everyone's got a different job they're trying to get done.
Correct. I mean, for my side, what I've seen is it's basically a connector and an enabler for IT to, instead of being that area of the business that has to say no, or we can't do that, or the system won't stay up. Sorry, Chief Marketing Officer, you can't run that campaign in the middle of the day. Right. Or you can't do inventory refreshes every 5 minutes because the system can't do that. It allows the business to say yes. It allows IT to go faster and focus on working on solving business problems and enabling rather than solving IT issues and issues with the infrastructure and services.
It's solving them in real time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Real time.
And it also starts to reframe real time, and we'll touch on that, and we'll touch on that a little bit. But I want to come to ask you, Rodrigo, when you start to talk about value for the stakeholders, I think we're also talking about some non-traditional stakeholders too, right? It's not just the CMO and the CIO battling out when can I send this out, or how many loads in the washer can I put in, right? It's a completely different stakeholder unit. So I wanted to ask you about that. What are you seeing?
Yes, so all these aspects that we just discussed are fundamental in bringing value to these additional stakeholders. And when you look at the total value equation and you see the benefits that the cloud have, starting to untether infrastructure, untether processes from the day-to-day of what the enterprises need to care about, deliver that through a cloud provider, and have the enterprise care about business processes that add value to them, how they can be the best consumer goods company in the planet, how can they have the best supply chain in the planet. All of that is where the attention is at versus the focus on infrastructure. So that's one of the fundamental benefits that the cloud provides, is that ability to untether worrying about infrastructure, maintaining infrastructure, to move the attention to differentiation, faster pace of innovation, and all of that. Right.
Yeah, I love that. Because, I mean, fundamentally, we're talking about, instead of just having the, like, where did we store it? Where did we lift and shift it to, right? Like, how many people, are we hybrid? Are we cloud? Are we not? Like, God, right? We're starting to talk about experiences. It's now experiences powered because we're on the cloud.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so what are you seeing there? Because I think that starts a very different conversation when you're talking about stakeholders. How are you getting your job done?
Yeah, if you think about it, we talk about moments that matter at HCL Software and how do you adapt to those, and really giving governments and healthcare companies the power to be able to put those processes online that are essential. We've seen this with state and local governments just being able to communicate at scale massively during when the governor comes out and gives a presentation on COVID.
Right.
And all of a sudden, everyone goes there. Well, you've got to answer the mail there. And the way I look at it, it almost goes back to the days where networking was not ubiquitous, right? It was slow. I'm never going to use my mobile device for this. Right. I'm going to call somebody. Now now we just have access to it. Well, I think compute and all of that, it's so much more than that. It's just available. Yeah. That speeds up agility of businesses to react. Yep. But then I'll just end with one last point, which by definition, reacting globally too. So in some countries, I need to do it this way. In other countries, I need to do it that way. And I think cloud native is really about enabling that with enterprise software, not commodity.
It's options. That's really what it comes down to. It just gives you a lot more options.
And gosh, didn't we have to learn that during the pandemic the hard way, right? Because it also wasn't about options. I mean, yes, massive business shifts, new business models on the fly. Yeah. Everyone has to behave like everyone else. But then it was, where was everyone working? Yeah. Right? And I think we start to forget that cloud also has the opportunity to dramatically shift what we're delivering, who's delivering it, when. Like it shifts both sides of the experience equation like nothing we've seen, right? Because, I mean, talk about future of work. It's like the now of work. Let's do this, you know?
Future of work has been not only accessibility, but also having the freedom and the flexibility, that agility to work when you want, as you mentioned, right? It goes back to time to value. How am I going to deliver this? With a cloud solution, you get the freedoms to develop at the hours you want and the applications that you want that drive back to that cost structure.
Yeah, without thinking about it. And I love the word you used earlier, having the confidence to be able to do it, right? It's about empowering your people to have the confidence as much as you're empowering your customer to do it. Like self-service on both sides.
Yeah.
That's happening because it's all about the delivery. So let's talk about the other buzz. We're going to play a little buzzword bingo, right? Just a little. Everyone can tap in. It's fine. Because like cloud, bang.
As long as you don't go to SOA, I'm okay. So
I know.
We're not services oriented.
We're not going there.
We're not going there. Okay.
Watch
Dates
out.
myself.
Yeah, watch out. Like, you can't do that.
No
We've
problem.
just lost like everyone viewing.
Everyone there.
We're gone. We're gone. No, AI.
Yes.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
You can't get to all these big dreams, all of the things that we hear our teams talk about. Quite frankly, all the things that our teams expect from their tools. Yeah. Because if Netflix can tell you what you need to Netflix and chill with, why can't my system tell me what I need to do next, right? Absolutely. Cloud is going to get us there. But it's interesting because you and I had a chance to talk about this earlier, right? And it's the issue of, it's about the data that can get us there. And cloud gets us to a whole new environment of data.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, ready for your next word? Microservices.
Boom.
No, I mean, seriously though, tee it up there. So microservices, to your point about AI and machine learning, has driven a level of processing into the cloud, as you've mentioned, that you could never have done on premise at the cost that you're able to do it. And you couldn't afford it, right? Yeah. And so now we have data which is coming from multiple sources. I mean, it's a plug and play model where I want to now connect in 5G, the edge, low orbit satellite data. All of it starts to come in and needs to be handled. Who can handle that? no one person, right?
Right.
But you bring in
I
machine
mean, it
learning.
can't be handled on spreadsheets?
Oh my goodness.
I've seen that try.
We've been there. We've done that.
Where's my pen and paper? Right?
Abacus.
Well, abacus, exactly, so abacus. But here we talk about data security as well, and the data trust you have
Yes.
to put into it. And I love that you brought up the regions, right? Because now we're looking at hybrid cloud, where I can put the processing in one place, I can put the data in the others if regulatory reasons require
Yes.
that. And here we have now the processing power that we could never dream of. And I think you mentioned this before about the time to innovation, to bring these ideas to life, are now at our fingertips. And it's just going to explode
Right.
even more.
Right.
And data is huge, right? IDC has seen over the next 5 years, we're going to have 2.5 times the amount of data as we have in the last 10 years.
Wow.
And it's going to reach 180 zettabytes of data that we have to deal with. So where's your abacus for that?
Right,
yeah,
right,
I don't know.
exactly. Right. Let's see a
I
count
gave
that
up.
high. Yeah.
You can't count that high.
And another aspect that I think is super important associated to data, we see at Google, databases were very decentralized. You had a database serving for marketing purposes, financial purposes, the sales invoices, so on and so forth. Then we saw a second stage with creation of data lakes, where all of a sudden the enterprise was beginning to stitch together and have a common outlook, view on these data sets through data lakes.
Yes.
That drove the ability to apply tools that generate insights.
Yeah.
From insights, now we have tools with machine learning and AI that drive creation of knowledge. So all of a sudden you went from just disparate databases to a journey into now the databases are finally driving insights and knowledge to faster decision into the business. This is value that's delivered through the cloud and by the cloud through this cloud native application. So it's a super, super important point for companies to pay attention to in this digital transformation process.
For sure.
And you need to be able to expand it, right? It's about, it's not just about your data anymore, it's the data of your partners. It's how do you bring all of that together? How do you look for shared signal?
Instrument it, how do you interpret it?
How do you get to it? How do you actually get to action from it? And then when you try to automate it,
Exactly.
you've got to be in the
Automation,
cloud, right?
right.
The
the only place to do it.
automation.
And you mentioned such an important point. It's not only your data, it's the data of the ecosystem around you that you do business with. I think an example that's very much in vogue right now is the issue we're facing with the physical supply chain, with ships and containers clogged.
That's raw data.
Exactly.
If there weren't clouds in the background, we might be able to see them all
Yeah,
piled
it's true.
up
It's
out
a little-
back there,
yeah,
and it'd be fine.
And the help is coming in that regard. So the concept of a digital twin to a supply chain, where you can mimic
love
all
that.
the links of a physical supply chain in a digital twin, and all of a sudden run models as to what are the weak points, how do we exchange data in a common data framework through the ecosystem in the supply chain, and trying to deliver the faster value of that supply chain that you want to the end customer. How is data exchange between the partners? How do I extract value of that exchange and potentially monetize it? So all of that is actually this next wave of transformation that's happening right now.
It's about connectedness. That ecosystem has to be connected together. The people, the data, the systems, all frictionless through the entire series to get to that point where we can have a supply chain that is ubiquitous across every group and every industry.
And done in a way where privacy is all handled and the regulatory aspects, which the underpinnings of the cloud technology allow for that.
That's
right.
And it allows for that to be a strategy.
Correct.
Right, because I think for a long time, we tend to look at security, at Constellation, we call it digital safety. We start to look at regulatory demands, security, and it's a checkbox, right? It's like what Debbie and Bob down at Risk made us come and look at, right? They came
Rodrigo
in.
said it best, right? That's what the microservices do. You let somebody else handle your security and your OAuth services and your compliance and regulatory needs.
But it becomes
not all on you and your service.
Exactly, but it's also not a checklist anymore. Right, because you can have AI reach into that data and look at things like observability tools. Let's look at things. It's not just the unicorns of DevOps running around being like, I've done stuff. I'm doing stuff with purpose, and I think that becomes a really interesting part of what we're talking about here, right? Because we're talking about experience and engagements and thinking about those things differently, dreaming up new experiences, but interrogating data differently.
That's right.
So that we get to more profitable outcomes. And I think that becomes the bridging gap with cloud, right? Where it begins to mean something for the business other than, so we saved a little money on that first lift and shift, you know?
And connecting the whole discussion back to the very beginning, and you get to do all of it that you said, consumed as a service, with enterprise-grade solutions ready for you, versus trying to develop it all in-house with a series of legacy systems that you perhaps has. And the value that leveraging cloud-native tools brings to you ultimately is the dramatic acceleration of your pace of innovation. That's such a critical element in the world we live in today. Companies disrupting businesses, disrupting each other, and they are able to do that because they're leveraging technology to the most.
And level of innovation that you're talking about also builds upon the relationships between data, the customer relationships that are built out. Now you start to see additional things that you could never have uncovered if you were trying to look at it at a human level. And now these very, almost so gold nuggets that you can start to pick up and take and build out on becomes value to putting the cloud in place in the very beginning, right? It's a cost structure.
It also has laid some things bare too, right? Like if it did shine a bit of a light on things that maybe some people in the org, because you can't play the game of corporate don't touch my button. When you're all trying to, align around cloud. So you can't in IT be like, no, you can't have that cool tool with data, or, marketing can't be over there like, no, it's all my customer data. No, you can't have it. Those games have to start falling away when we're intentionally looking at cloud transformation as the foundation for our digital transformation.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, and that's what we're all here talking about today, right? That's what people are listening in on. How do I take my digital experiences to the next level? Change? Like it's got to, you have to
Your
start.
consumers are going to force you. You're already seeing it now, right? With, I think,
your teams are going to force you.
100%. And, or if not, they'll go somewhere else where they are, because the choice is available now. And the expectation, if I can get food delivered to my car immediately, why can't I do this?
And I think the best examples perhaps that were put in front of us were at the very beginning of the pandemic. The world was not ready to operate from home. So the companies that first were able to set up a digital platform that, hey, buy it online, tell me the spot in the parking lot where you're going to be at, and I will put in the trunk for you. The companies that got to that type of model first, being either electronics retailer or supermarket, doesn't matter, they won a lot of business. Why? Because they were able to activate their cloud native platforms, readjust them fast to address a new business demand that was in front of them, and they got a lot of business as a function of that. The other ones that didn't, boy, had a
and we're going to hear a great example of that later today, right? where at AI-Futtaim, an organization that, listen, how do you change the way people were buying cars?
Unbelievable.
When they couldn't go touch the car. Like, awesome example. We're going to hear from them in a little bit. So I'm excited about that. What are some of the other examples? Like, what are some of the examples that you've seen that were one of those examples of like, didn't see them being able to pull that one off?
Yeah, I mean, as Rodrigo said, at Perficient, we had clients come to us that said, I need a buy online, pick up in store, I need real-time inventory, I gotta figure this out. Now we have retailers with brick and mortar stores with inventory just sitting there. We had people buying record numbers of pets. How do you get your dog food?
Or the dog house. Like, what do you need?
Exactly, when it's all sitting on a ship out there in the ocean. So it was all about the ability to quickly pivot, open up that inventory, go omni-channel, get everything exposed online. Things like Twilio for customer service, as Rodrigo was saying.
That amazing.
Hey, I'm here now. I'm in spot number 3. That was all enabled by cloud native technologies. And really,
I love that.
It just took what we thought was going to take 6 to 10 years of innovation happened in under a year and months.
But isn't it also nuts that like part of that innovation was also quite literally in allowing the customer's actual voice to come back into experience, right? Because cloud allowed that. You could suddenly bring in Twilio where it was the phone, like it was literally the customer saying, I told you I was in spot 4, but I'm actually in spot 10. Oops,
Exactly.
where, you know, like, where they're on the phone doing it. And it was actually the customer, and the customer felt like they were part of it, and they didn't feel like they were working through technology.
Yep.
And I think, and you know, we've all had a chance just, you know, hanging out here in the beautiful sunshine, talking about those types of issues where, for a long time, and I think in the early days when we wanted to talk about things like digital transformation, the glitter just exploded, right? Digital transformation.
And 250 million with it, yes.
Yeah, right? It's right up there with master data management, right? When we started to talk about those things early on, we ended up in a position where we were asking our teams to transform around the technology we could implement, right?
Right.
Now we're in a very different situation. We have to really have that technology that's going to work in the way that our teams want to. So what are some of those examples? You know, we've talked about examples of when our customer has really driven that type of change. But what about our internal customer? What are some of those examples of when it's been our internal customer, our teams, our people who are driving the change and the transformation for tools because they want to be good at delivering experiences? Any examples jump out for you guys?
I've got a great one. You know, in today's environment, at the speed we're going, you need partners to help you on this journey. And when you bring in a new partner outside of your organization, you need to be able to help them spin up your local development environment. You need to do that quickly. You need to do that securely. And Cloud Native has that figured out. You can now get a whole environment running in a container, ready to go for that software engineer, where that used to take sometimes weeks to do that. Oh, we got to set your laptop up, we got to get you connected to all these points. And now that's happening in days. With,
we're going to
with this
research
type
our
of
VPNs.
technology. So that's been a big one. Again, speed to innovate. You need help, you need technical help, and they need access to your environments, and it needs to be secure, and it needs to be done quickly. So that's been a big one.
I really like the example Dave mentioned, and it gave teams also the ability to operate in regions that they were not before.
Precisely.
Without having necessarily to set up infrastructure. So all of a sudden, if your company wanted to expand to the Middle East, you could rely on infrastructure that's available from cloud providers, and your attention would be about human resources that you need to hire in order to operate there, but not infrastructure to operate there. So that corporate agility on resource allocation wherever in the planet you need it, and also in whichever group within the organization that you need, as you said, Dave, really transform these organizations' ability to meet the customers where they are.
But you mentioned something about that, right? You mentioned something about meeting customers where they are, because it's about having the opportunity to meet them in a culturally relevant and sensitive way, and that's a very different equation.
Yes, I mean, especially if you talk about things like language and empathy that you're trying to, you know, exude through a digital form. Right? We've seen this shift from your favorite brand that you've been dealing with. Now you're going to the online version of it, looking at how do I re-invoke that physical type of experience in a digital experience. And you can't necessarily do it as fast by yourself. So what you do, you leverage partners, a community. You can plug in all these additional great innovations that are out there, plug those in. You have things like translation. You can move to the regions that you want as well. And then you have to deal with data security and privacy and trust that comes along with it. Those are the check boxes you have to have, but it really means something. If you can speak to someone in their language, you can have that visual impact that you want to have, not just a textual based one, but move to a more emotional based one.
And even with tools like AI, you can now allow them to actually ask you that question in their language. It's not just about North American language processing, right? Like that's not what the N stands for. Right?
Natural.
Exactly, that's not the N in that phrase. So all of a sudden, your customer is literally asking your digital product, help me, in their language, and now you can answer back.
And mobile, I mean, mobile has been the biggest shift, you know, that we can see, and leveraging those little mini computers that can do a lot with that. And then how do you connect it back in? All the data that you want to leverage, you mentioned, you know, CDPs and customer data. You know, is it mine, or am I going to share it from marketing to sales to support, finance? All of them have access to the same consistency across the board. And the cloud allows you to bring in additional departments. You talked about
Yes.
internally, right? How do I have this 10 units of capacity? I might be using 2 units today. What digital application could I create to drive more revenue, to drive better services? Let's ask, right? Ask sales or whomever, and then you bring the partners in to help connect it in, and now you've got full capacity of your cloud infrastructure being used across the board.
Yeah, and then when you go, to build on that point, when you go truly cloud native and you adopt hybrid models together with your cloud development, it allows you to even choose, you were talking about a mobile device, where to run, we talked about that earlier, but in which footprint do you want to run your solutions? Meaning, in a hybrid environment, you can certainly have 100% in the private cloud, 80% in the public cloud, a combination in between, and adjust that on the fly without having to, one, worry about infrastructure allocation, two, without having to redevelop your application. And that is a fundamental new value that's delivered through hybrid cloud, because once again, builds up on agility, and it does not drive repetition of work. It allows you to truly focus on innovating your business process to deliver more to your customer.
And move your skills, your talent to something that has higher value than repetitive things that you could push off for automation.
Instead of driving challenges in the infrastructure.
We had a great speaker at a Constellation event who said AI shouldn't be there to actually try to convince people that they weren't valuable.
No.
Right? It's not about devaluing the people. It's actually about augmenting, and it's about proving to them that they've got they've got superpowers.
Right. Yes.
Right? They've got superpowers. How do we unleash those? Which I think is incredible. You know, I think the other interesting thing about this is that oftentimes the conversation around how do we capitalize on these cloud opportunities? How do we capitalize on these experience opportunities? These two conversations clash in the boardroom when the real land of no, the CFO, comes in and is like, ooh, remember how you guys did that last time and it didn't work? Explain to me how it's gonna work this time, right? And those are very real, honest conversations. I know that talking to business leaders, talking to CIOs, you hear it time and time again. There is just this battle fatigue that everyone seems to be going through. So let's talk KPIs, right? Because I think when we're going in and making a case for this needed transformation, we have to have KPIs and goals and metrics and clear points of value set up ahead of time so that all of the business stakeholders can say, okay, I get where I contribute to that. Let's talk about that as a shared value. You know, that's a KPI we all can get behind because it's a business KPI and not just some weird tech acronym, right? So what are the KPIs that you guys have seen really move the needle to get this to happen?
I was just going to say, I think one big one that I've seen, and this is something that's I've seen it done in the 90s even, but it's more pertinent today. It's aligning IT and business KPIs around delivery. And it's abstract on the IT side because it's the technical bits don't always necessarily align to the outcome, but creating a traceability model where that business goal that I just set to be able to effectively get these campaigns to increase the conversion rates from X to Y, and then the experience is used and the person gets there and solves the problem. How many business processes can I bring online in a year? You don't have to change people's compensation, but you change their awareness of the impact they're having. And then give IT and the delivery teams that KPI. Right? It's not about, did you do something architecturally beautiful? That matters. But did you solve something?
Right.
And what was your role in it?
And maybe that's, you know, because I understand, like a lot of times we'll talk about compensation changes and do we have to align those compensations? And that's where it gets really ugly, like it just gets to a nasty conversation. But it's almost like, okay, but, you know, at the end of the day, we're all in business to do business. Like, and that's okay. Like, our goal is to have a profitable business. None of us want to actually go bankrupt. Like, it's like and if you are a business that wants to do good, guess what? You can do more good if you make money. You know, so how do we get to those KPIs? So like, so I think that's great. Like, give them that roadmap. This is where we all have to work. What are some of the KPIs you've seen?
I mean, I agree with Gary. I think it's all about setting a strategy, having a roadmap, and then measuring that velocity. So how quickly now can IT get X number of stories through a sprint?
Yeah.
Can we start to take the bottlenecks in our systems and business and say, hey, if we were able to break this off into a microservice, spin off a team just to work on that certain area and functionality, we can go this much quicker, therefore to hitting these goals over time. And that's how you strategically grow your business these days.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. That's awesome.
And I would say that the evolution of these KPIs also have been evolving over time. So IT may be, in the example you used in the 90s, they would be on the hook to uptime of the servers in the data center. They were on the hook on how fast can you bring up our new commerce system.
Correct.
Like nowadays, that is provided as a service, which allowed IT to have a different KPI. What is the security posture that the solutions in this organization need to have in order to meet the business demands? What is the reliability of this infrastructure? How fast are the teams delivering new versions of this solution, so our commerce engine is always the best in the market. So the KPIs today are much more close to the business stakeholder than to IT infrastructure than ever before, and that's a great thing.
And it's speaking the language of the business, right? And so many functions have gone through this shift, right?
They have.
Marketing's gone through this shift, IT is going through this shift, where we're not like, I have clicks.
Yeah.
You know,
There's
it's about the business.
There's definitely, there's a business, we're talking DevOps, WebOps, FinOps. You know,
Right.
they're all
RevOps,
really-
it's
they're
all, everyone gets an
driving through
ops.
that. And the last, and completely agree with this alignment between business and IT for that cost contribution. The one that I've seen that was most interesting was also measuring a percentage of proactive activity versus reactive activity,
interesting.
which ties back to automation. So the more that you can drive proactive, you mentioned earlier, knowledge being surfaced at the time that you need it, the reaction time you have for answering a customer's question, those are going to drive better customer experiences. So how can we bring more proactive actions to bear by bringing on more of the different departments into the cloud, sharing data, sharing these processes across each other, then you can start to see that shift in that percentage from proactive and reactive.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I think that is everyone tired of telling pandemic stories yet?
Oh.
Or do we have like one more round in us? Come on.
Sure.
Come on, one more.
There's so many
Lightning round, right. So, you know, I think that there are a lot of stories of lessons learned and, you know, not just businesses that shifted and people that had to pivot, but really, like, they kind of, you know, they were like these light bulb aha moments for people where it really, and not just for IT or not just for the front line of experience, right? I mean, at the board level, the light went on because they were like, oh, dang, we can't be in the office anymore? Oh, so that's what you guys have been talking about a mobile workforce, right? Like, but like light bulb
cloud
moments.
is. That's why the servers.
Right, oh,
became
that's
real.
why. That's why we're not rolling racks down the hill, right? So what were some of those, like, what are some of your favorite, like, this is the best aha moment with cloud and through the pandemic? What are some of those stories?
For me, it was telemedicine.
Yeah.
For me, that was
nice,
the biggest shift from an industry that was very focused on face-to-face, now moving completely remote.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have been possible if you didn't have the right infrastructure in place to be able to do that shift.
Yeah.
I mean, and just think of how many different people they affected. In fact, I had a friend who was a doctor, and she's like, I was seeing patients. I'm not sure if my business can even grow that way. And then found she could do it even further beyond her region because there was this accessibility to it. So for me, telemedicine was the one industry that truly grabbed onto it and made the most of it.
And I think what's so interesting is you're starting to see hospital systems and healthcare networks deciding that they are a telehealth business first, and that they're kind of almost their like VIP treatment, like they can actually charge more for, you know, those other, for different services, but it changed the balance sheets. You know, where they weren't spending costly time on things that could be handled in telehealth, which is amazing.
Another example that comes to mind is education. It was it came up more as a wake-up call, and how fast could schools, school districts, get a curriculum that has been paper-based and make it a digital curriculum to be able to help kids. And some got there faster than others, but it was a big wake-up call to the entire education segment.
Yeah.
And now I believe that a year and a half, almost 2 years after the pandemic began here in the US, we are a much better level of helping kids digitally than we were 2 years ago, either in a full hybrid environment or even on class. Now, the kids are back to school in most places in the country, but the aspects of the digitalization of the way they're receiving education remains there, which I think it's fundamental because that's the world they will face when they grow up.
Precisely.
Right? It's the world they're in right now.
Exactly.
You know, they're not accessing content and being like, well, I can't read that because I can't go to the library. They're like, or I could just do this,
here.
Mom. Right, it's that look on their faces, right? So absolutely education changed. I think the most interesting stories of when education changed is when we didn't put the burden of technology on the teachers and on the kids, where it just worked. Like, hey, we're gonna put this in front of you and you're gonna be able to see your teacher, you're gonna be able to get your assignments, you can interact with your friends, instead of, okay, Mom and Dad, you're a CIO now, you know, like, it just, like every principal was suddenly like, you know, in DevOps. We were like,
It took a few
whoa.
months to get everything
Exactly.
there.
It was a big wake-up call.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
And along with education, one of the most inspiring stories I heard was even in the higher education in colleges, where people were able to go back to school because they had time on their hands, right? And the colleges see it as a new channel of being able to say, well, I'm no longer limited just to my one region.
Right.
I can now offer my classes worldwide.
Right.
And having that on demand and opening it up for others who might not be able to travel to that location.
Right.
Now all of that experience and knowledge can be shared globally. And that to me was just inspiring to see the
I mean,
reach.
how many of us started thinking differently about our teams?
Oh, yeah.
Right? If you had to hire someone,
How many people we hired remotely and at
Right.
distance and hadn't met them in a year.
but it was never and it wasn't a conversation of, when we get out of the pandemic, we still should have people who can come to our offices.
Right.
It eliminated that part of the conversation where we could now say, it doesn't matter where you are.
As long as you have connectivity.
As long as you have connectivity, right? But for our systems, for our documents, for our collaboration, for how we work, we had to figure out those cloud tools pretty quickly. Because work had to change. Like how we work fundamentally changed because of that.
And I would just say, as a software provider, to add to that point, it's my responsibility to make sure I can provide that in a secure, scalable way.
Right.
It's all of a sudden, enterprise software became cool again.
Right, like really
I can do this
fast,
as
right?
an open source website provider. Sure.
Sure, yeah.
I'm talking my medical records.
Right.
Right. Okay.
Right.
No, I need this to be reliable, that it's accessible. But then on top of that, just another surprise to answer your point, governments.
Yeah.
I've not worked much in government, but
You're like, that was a unique one, yeah.
I've got clients all around the world, and what are they? I need 1,000 business processes online in 6 months.
Right.
Because I don't.
Or vaccine rollout.
All of it.
Oh, yeah.
quickly that had to pivot.
And it has to be available on the cloud.
Contact
it's got to be able to
tracing.
scale. All of that. Think about all those systems that had to get put in place. That's what we were powering, and thankfully we had the tech to do it. But it puts pressure on increased automation, making the tools easier to use, making them more available, to empower use of all that data.
Exactly.
I mean, the sky's the limit on this.
I mean, it brings up certain keywords that every single one of you have used, right? And this is what I find fascinating about this conversation. In order to do that, you needed to have the confidence in the data so that you could have a talent supply chain in place so that you could actually engage and think differently and then deliver differently, regardless of who was delivering that. Without the confidence in being able to do that, without the agility of being able to do that, you would have still been sitting there with someone in the background being like, don't we just have to make a website? Like that would have been the totality of the conversation, and we'd still be waiting for like vaccine rollouts, right? Like that's the reality of the situation that we're in. But I mean, and I think to your point, for a lot of software vendors, it became an age of, you guys really had to sell confidence. You had to sell platforms that people didn't just like using or want to use or were efficient to use, they had to trust every single day that they were coming onto a platform and it was going to work in the way they expected it to protect the things that were supposed to be protected, was secure, had the services that you were promising at the very beginning, that everything was accessible. It changed the definition of what trust really means to the buyer. And that was a pretty big shift that happened.
Yeah.
And it changed not only from the technology, but there was a people change too that had to happen to align, to be able to take all those fast processes. Sure, I can deploy an update to the website overnight, right? Or maybe even in seconds. But are the processes and the people changed aligned to that?
Right.
And unfortunately, we found that only 4% of organizations have truly aligned all the way through across the entire business. Sure, pockets are great. You know, you can get web ops, DevOps, and they've kind of been living this way for a while.
Yeah.
But try to get your finance or your legal team to act in that same pace of innovation, that same pace of deployment. It's completely different. And the audiences, we just saw that baby boomers are providing the biggest increase to B2B commerce online. Last year it was 49%. This year it's 65%.
Wow.
That's a huge growth, huge growth. And that is changing the audiences that we have to sell to. We have to think about differently. And so all the ways, all the marketing ways that you're trying to reach, and you're doing that across regions, languages, cultures. You know, now you start to multiply that. The opportunity is there. Why do I have to worry about the tech, right? Don't.
Right.
Leave it.
Take the friction of that out.
Take that out, leave it with IT, put it in the cloud, and then I can focus on, I need a piece of that baby boomer opportunity.
The tech, to use a very old analogy, the cloud tech needs to be like dial tone. Remember the 80s? You picked up that thing called phone. You put here, the dial tone was there. You never had to think about it. So technology and innovation has become already dial tone. It's just there. You just need to tap into it.
When the innovation was getting the extra long cords, you could take it to another room.
Oh, that was awesome.
Right? That's how I got a phone in my room, I'm not gonna lie. I was like, ding, like I'm gonna drag that bad boy over.
How long can that wire be?
Exactly. So what comes next? I mean, I think that becomes kind of a great place to kind of land here, because I think that a lot of times in previous years, like last year, let's be honest, when we would talk about transformation, people would kind of talk about it like it was this great destination, and then like there would be a voice that would come over the loudspeaker and be like, "You have arrived," and you're like, "No, like that's not going to happen. Like that's not how digital transformation works. That's not how cloud works. Like a ding doesn't happen." So we're on this treadmill that never stops. Like we're officially the hamster on the loop. But we're driving to different places. We're driving to business-driven places. We're not driving to transformation for transformation's sake, which is something that I've heard you say a lot as we've been together. Where is next, right? Like where are you seeing really cutting-edge, new thinkers looking?
Yeah, to me, I love looking through history and seeing like these patterns change. Right, for many years, the world lived out of gold. Gold defined how civilizations commerced with one another. Over the last 150 years or so, the new gold was oil. Oil dictated a lot how large economies exchange value with one another. We have surpassed to a new era, a new age, if you will, and that is data. Data today is the new gold or the new oil. And if we fast forward the tape long enough, it goes back to how can you harvest value out of the data assets, that data lake that I was talking about? How fast can you do that? How can you tap into a safe, secure, the point that you are bringing on a common data platform and exchanging data with your ecosystem? Companies that start tapping into that value, innovative value creation through data to offer customers with new business model, new ways to procure, will really be the ones that will differentiate themselves. And at Google, we provide a lot of services that can facilitate that through analytics, through machine learning, through AI. And we see a lot of companies tapping into that to really build the next business process for the next, not 10 years. The future is much closer now. We could talk about for the next 5 months even, that will drive that new and innovative business model that we haven't seen before, but yet it becomes a home run. So to me, it's all about harvesting data, speed of innovation on data, driving quickly to knowledge, applying that into a new business model, offer that to the customer. How fast you can do that over and over and over, I think that will define a lot of what we'll see in the future.
I like it. What comes next?
I think the gap between the big players like Amazon and Walmart and what they had been doing the last 5 years versus the smaller players is going to close and has closed significantly because of technologies like cloud native. We are seeing, the whole buy online, pick up in store. We're seeing omni-channel just explode. We were saying it for years. Hey, retailers, you should get on board with this. And with the digital transformation and with the pandemic, there I said that word again, it's forced everyone to just have a quick wake-up call to say, we need to innovate, we need to do quickly. The pieces of the technology are out there. We can assemble things much faster to compete.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's what's going to get interesting is there's so many more options than just the big players out there, and that gap it will close.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love it.
Well, I'll reiterate, innovation, omni-channel.
Yeah.
And then adding into that would be rethinking, reimagining how content, because we're all content producers in some way, in our personal lives, even in our work lives. That democratization of how content gets created and published out is going to mean we have to rethink. It's no longer just going to be an email or SMS text or a document. It's now going to move into AR and VR. What we would have thought about gaming in the past, okay, so now we've incorporated gaming in terms of how we watch our movies, how we watch all these other things. So rethinking through the channels, using the latest technologies that have to be processed in the cloud because we can't run them natively anymore, right? We have to extend it and pull it and plug it together. Then the ideas of innovation just start to bloom. And that to me is going to be the most exciting part of it, is to see what comes next with that innovation based on those channels.
Yeah, I mean, and it is all going to be defined differently when we get to the metaverse.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Sorry, just, had to say it, right? But if you're talking about immersive, bi-directional, ambient experiences that are just there, and you are experiencing them through AR, VR, they are all around you. Games, content, moments, experiences. All of it's going to be redefined, and we're going to have to be real crisp in our language, because there's going to be an asset, and there's going to be content, and there's going to be an experience, and while all three of those things are going to be interlinked, they're all different, and that becomes really interesting. So Gary, what's going to be new?
For me, I think we're hitting on it. We've talked data. There's this notion of information that people are dying for, and then there's notion of knowledge, and I think you're onto something here. Not knowledge management systems, not that.
No.
But it's this idea of I really need a solution or something that's going to allow me to gain knowledge to be able to take a decision. That information is going to come from all kinds of different sources. Companies are going to have to let go, and as an enterprise software provider, I got to figure out how I can give the tools to allow that ability to let go and know that when that consumer engages with me at that moment that mattered, they've gotten that knowledge from multiple sources, and I can understand that, and I can really automate how they engage.
You're relevant. You're relevant at the right time.
Customers in charge. In the game of us dictating the rules.
That journey model of come on now, go through the
follow my little path.
all gone.
And I think that's really what this is all about.
Absolutely.
That to me is where the focus is.
Absolutely.
Giving them the communication channels that they want to have back to the business. And we've talked a lot about customer experiences, and the next level that we've been writing about is customer transformation on themselves. I mean, a simple example from a consumer side that you can understand is you put these little devices in your car that begins to track, who has the car, how fast they're driving, et cetera. But it's not just that. You're taking that data, to your point, you're analyzing it, and what's it going to do? It's going to change the driving pattern of that consumer.
Right.
So we're changing the consumers as much as we are changing the businesses.
Yeah.
And those expectations, what you have today, that benchmark is going to move tomorrow.
Very different.
Very more, and then it's going to continue to grow.
Look at the fitness industry, for example. Look how much that has innovated and changed during the pandemic, right? Where people typically went to congregate to go to a gym and have a fitness membership is now dominated by Peloton and companies like Beachbody and Tonal and Mirror. All these things now, so everybody's working out at home and getting experiences and things that they never knew they could get, and it's just explosive growth.
But they're also being disrupted by trainer down the street who figured out how to get a Zoom and is now charging, and it's, so it like all of these points of disruption. And when we do get to the metaverse, everybody throw some glitter on the table now, thank you. When we do get there, now it's about how I was on the Peloton and my avatar while I was pedaling went grocery shopping because I did that in that immersive experience. And that becomes the game changer, right? Because it's the trainer down the street that now has a new business, and it's me that didn't have to leave my bike, right?
Exactly.
Now I don't have to leave my house, and that's not even because of the pandemic. It's just because I'm lazy.
Or be anywhere in the world.
Exactly.
Or anywhere in the
allows you to earn money.
Exactly.
It gives you the optionality, right? Before, you did not have that option.
And the confidence to be able to get there. Okay, guys, listen. Thank you guys so much. This has been awesome.
Absolutely.
We'll do it again next year, and we'll figure out if all of our predictions were right.
Done.
Gary?
It's documented. It's on film.
Done. Awesome.
Same location?
Same bat channel.
I love it. I love it. No, thank you guys so much.
Thank you,
That was
Liz.
great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Were your ears burning earlier? We were talking about this story with the panel, and I am so excited that you, our audience, are going to get to hear this amazing story about Al-Futtaim's true digital transformation. So let's start at the beginning. And Heyman, I want to ask you this question. Where did you start? What was the challenge that you were addressing when you really knew you needed to transform and really start this journey and begin this process of everything from modernization, transformation, all of these great things? What were the key challenges that you were looking to address?
So, traditionally also you need to understand the kind of the cultural setup of the place, where we have and where the organization is primarily running, which is Dubai, UAE, United Arab Emirates. You may see a great amount of malls there because half of the year is very, very hot, and the only option people have over there is to go to the malls, and
ski.
It was more of it's ski, and it's more about brick and mortar shopping. But as the population started to grow and diversify and distances increased, people wanted was seeing buying online or looking at digital options, because as the new generation started coming up, our organization also felt that we are a pure brick and mortar business, but now we need to slowly, if we want to keep up to the pace, we need to slowly change ourselves. Take the e-commerce journey, take the digital journey, go to the consumer, just not bring the consumer to us, but we also go back to our consumers and then see how we can expand our business and our consumer reach. So that's where we started our journey with.
Yeah, that's amazing.
The first need that where we need to take this step of moving, digitizing solutions, looking at tools which can support us, looking at teams which can support us. So that's where we started off with, first having a proper web presence of all the different verticals which we are in: real estate, automotive, retail, servicing, because nobody knew what Al-Futtaim was. If somebody is not known to the region and saying Al-Futtaim, oh, what is it? Yeah, you have so many companies, so what do you do? So that's where we started the journey with. And, we wanted to first look at a tool which could support the variety of different businesses we have with still a common framework. support back our business to manage all their brochureware content on by themselves, not be IT dependent, and move ahead with it. So that's where we started off with our digital journey, that, this is what we would like to do. How do we get a strong digital experience tool which can help our business, do this pure brochure marketing, bring more knowledge to our customer base, bring them more close where they can learn about the products we sell, the services we sell, which are actually coming to our store and visiting us. And then, the journey started where people went on the e-commerce journey where they wanted to buy online, book online, reserve online. And while we were going through that and thinking, I think so it was kind of something, sometimes when you have kind of these big pandemics, yes, it has a negative effect, but it also has a positive effect. And I think so that literally put a lot of fuel into our drive. COVID hit us 2 years back, and suddenly everybody realized, no, brick and mortar is not the only way of doing business. We need to go digital. And that's where,
that's amazing.
Transformation journey took the highest speed. And then we had to rush around and look at solutions which were cheap, solutions which were robust, solutions which were giving us flexibility, and solution which could be cloud native, support us in our journey of being cloud native, because you can start small, grow without any worry about, oh, I need to buy this infrastructure. It can have that much months or weeks of lead time. It helps us. So that's when we started our journey. And while we did have a good tool with our hand in HCL DX, and we had taken some traditional approaches, we were continuously talking to the HCL team and saying that, if we want to take this journey and transform ourselves to be more agile, talk about MVPs, quick product releases, how we can do that. And that's where we started our journey.
That's
and
terrific.
today we have that implementation in both the traditional approach as well as the new modern cloud headless approach, which my colleague, Arijit, can talk more.
I love that, because what Hemant just described is flexibility, but made real, right? I think we talk about flexibility, but it's kind of hard for people to realize that. But when you're talking about, you're talking about an organization with 33,000 employees, 20 countries. That's not just a challenge, that's chaos, right? That is very, very different. Multiple lines of business. But what Hemant just described was the ability to satisfy the needs of the business that needed that traditional approach, but then also be able to move forward with the flexibility of that approach. Share a little bit more about that with us.
Yeah, so we started off with DX, and we are really grateful that the DX actually served very important, crucial roles achieving the business goals in this aspect. So what we did, we used virtual portals for different businesses. That helps us, to ring fence the different businesses onto their own working spaces. And then we used the portal access control, the PAC, and which is very effective in terms of controlling the people's accesses from the most granular level to the most wider, widely applied level. So that was a perfect match for our use case, right? And that is traditional, still traditional, right? We had entire different requirements from the businesses going forward, and then some businesses wanted entirely component dependent websites, fully driven by business, no IT talk, nothing. So they don't want to talk to the IT for regular releases, right?
They wanted to talk to you, they just didn't want to have to keep coming back to you.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. So so that's where we had to go back to our drawing boards and re-architect our solutions. But DX was a big part of it, which helped us to enable that, and integrate the design language systems to right into the heart of DX components with the WC and the VCOM components that we are talking about. So as soon as we did that, we published that product for the businesses, and businesses were delighted to get the thing that they envisioned that they could achieve, the power in their hand, right? They could mold the website, in and out, day in and day out, any time of the day, and they had the entire control of the website. And not only one, that same website got replicated in 5 different scenarios.
Wow, I love it.
Yeah, and even if you ask me, I won't be able to recognize the website we built because they changed it. They changed the entire thing on the fly, right? So that is the power that we were able to give to the business without compromising any of the security concerns.
That can't break. Right.
Yes, exactly. So they can do, but they cannot break.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that is.
I love that distinction.
Yeah.
I love that distinction.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
you know what? People want to be great at their jobs.
Yeah.
Right. And you've given them that power to do that.
Exactly.
And you've untethered that from like the land of no. Right. Which is always what we need to do. Right. So I love that. Absolutely. So I think that with the complexity of your business, and with the complexity of all the different you said something so interesting to me, that all the different businesses wanted something, right?
Yes.
So when you rolled these out, now they're all of a sudden, they're creating on their own, they're doing on their own.
Yeah.
Did they start asking for new stuff?
Yes. However, the framework, the DX framework, and that on top of that, what we integrate, the design language system that we have integrated with that, it is flexible enough to welcome new components, right?
Yeah.
So it's okay. The business. So that caveat we have always put in front of the business that yes, you will be having a library of components. You want to do something more, we can definitely introduce new components and make it like the library getting richer and richer, and even better, they don't have to publish it for each and every website every time.
Right.
As soon as they do it for once.
It's centralized.
Yes.
Oh, see, that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
And that also, we are talking about the traditional ones, right? And
yeah,
this is one business we're talking about.
Right.
There were different businesses, and automotive is the biggest one in Al-Futtaim. And we have started the automotive journey very recently on DX.
I want to get into this automotive conversation with you, right? And Heyman, I want you to chime in here as well, because I think there's so many interesting things about this. I've bought a car, a couple in my lifetime, right? And what I'm used to doing is you go to the lot, you go to where the cars are, and you get in it, and you touch it, and you see it, and maybe you do some research online, but it's like a brochure that's online, right? That you look through. The pandemic hits.
Right.
You're not allowed out of your house. So you're not allowed to go buy that car, but you still need to buy a car. Like the need for the new car or the aspiration for a new car hasn't changed. Absolutely. So what did you have to do in that scenario? Because, I mean, Heyman said it wonderfully before, is that, it changed the buying behavior, it changed the need in an environment that hadn't been changed before. So what happened? Take me through that journey.
Sure.
So yeah, sure. Because two components. One thing which Arijit covered was was from a technical angle. He said that yes, we created components, and this was like build one and use multiple times. Now, there's one very interesting fact, which that the technical gurus or the technical Greeks like Arijit, don't realize what they are bringing into it is the commercial aspect of it, because the business were very comfortable that now I'm getting the worth from a dollar. I'm spending a dollar, but now because by spending that, I have the total control on my side. When, as Arijit said, today the website was looking this, it had a nice Halloween theme, and 1 month down the line, they want to get the Thanksgiving theme. They would do on their own. No need to touch IT, no need to ask for a change request, and that was saving them a lot of money. So they could do things on their own. They could make changes, give it a complete different look and feel. So that was giving them a lot of cost savings also in that area. And they used to come to IT only when they had a need of an additional component, which because the framework was set right, or a problem, sure. But because the framework was set right, creating that new component was relatively a lot more cheaper than the original framework which we had built. So that was a big advantage. Yeah. So this all actually helped us, again, feel comfortable with the tool when we had to start again with a complete different approach, not a pure traditional approach, but more of an microservices, cloud native component based approach that, this is what we would like to do for our automotive. As you said, automotive business was all about touch, feel, sit, test drive, and then go. And then COVID suddenly made that change. There were companies which were trying out, but then they realized, no, now this has become a need. Because if I know the car, and if I have a nice laptop, I have a nice computer. If you can give me something, where I already get that feel, I already see what is there in the car, you give me good details, I will make. And today we have started the journey is, where we want to eventually reach is, yes, you can buy the car, then you come to the showroom, you collect it, you be with your mask, with your gloves, feel safe so that, you're not worried about anything. But the next step would be if you have selected the car, you have bought once, but you're going to buy this again, you're very comfortable with the brand because these are the brands which we are selling today. Toyota, Honda, Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge, very well known brands. And you want the car to be delivered to your home, we can do that. And that's the journey which we ahead. And this is where we are trying to see that how HCL as a tool is helping giving that flexibility to the business so that the content is easily managed, content is easily shared, and the approach which we are giving is taking the headless approach here so that your front end is lightweight, can work on multiple devices without facing one.
That's terrific. But I think what I really love about what you just shared, Haiman, is that it allows you to work with the business to map what the actual experience is for the customer. So yes, you want to learn all these things about the car. You've decided on the car. You've come into the store. You've come back to the mall. You've got your mask on. You've got your gloves on. But now you don't want to sit and fill out all the paperwork. We have to do that digitally. Now how do I make a payment digitally? How do I put the down payment digitally? You can work with the business to identify those points of experience and need. And because you have the composable platform, you're able to iterate on those and add those incrementally. And I love that about the story because it's not about one experience and you're done. It's about making sure that we're constantly evolving and that transformation is that continuous journey that we're always on. I think that's fantastic. I think that's fantastic. What are some of the lessons that you learned? And what are some of the things that you both learned from this journey and from going through these experiences? Has it really been about expanding even where you thought transformation was possible?
Yeah, absolutely. Because we are all from the beginning. We were thinking about exploring the extensibility, the capability of the platform, how we can utilize that. What are the capabilities that are coming with the new versions? We have worked on we have moved on the AKS version of DX. And that explores, that opens up a lot of other possibilities, and that we have incorporated to to meet the demanding needs of the business, right? So you think of a set of content. It is not only a particular channel that we are talking about. We are talking about omni-channel now, right? So whatever content we are building, it has to serve, it has to be purposed in different channels, and it has to be scalable, right? It has to scale up and down, and it has to scale on demand, and that's where
on the customer's demand.
Absolutely.
And the user's demand.
Users'
That's
demand.
the new thing.
That's the thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is all about customers, all oriented. All the requirements are customer oriented, right? So that is where the omni-channel idea comes in, right? So as soon as we are rolling out with one website, that builds the framework of it, and that is reusable forever.
And
right?
you can move
and
that
yeah,
on.
move that on
That's
the next
terrific.
one, because we have to use a template. And what Heyman pointed out, that is very, very valid, that how it becomes financially viable over the time, and how it can become and turn a better investment, a better return of investment over the time, right? So that's where I feel it really shines, that, okay, how much flexible, how much reusable the different components are. So because you have seen it, not only the traditional approach, but with the new approach, we have used the headless way. So it's API first now, right? Everything has to be API first. So everyone is working on the same concept, and the entire team building API first, microservices first. So all those things are playing out together. So we have the DX serving all the content as a central source. The businesses are going there and manipulating the content, and as soon as that is done, they can publish the content on the fly on the websites. We have multiple layers of caching, so in terms of scalability, it doesn't. It is very robust.
You don't have to worry
about resilient.
that.
Yes,
it's
very resilient.
And that's a huge point. And in the panel, just before we were talking about this issue of how do you have the confidence to know that all of these innovations, all of this transformation, the agility that you have in your mind of like, this is how fast we're going to move, this is how quickly we're going to move, that you can actually do it, and that your business teams and your business users are also coming with you, that it's not just the IT team running ahead. I think that is a really big point. And Heyman, I'm going to ask you this, because we're talking that there were certainly different expectations and different opportunities that IT could bring forward, but did it also help in making this a really strategic business opportunity as well? Because I can imagine that it would have changed some of those business conversations with your business unit stakeholders. This wasn't just making a new website anymore. This was changing the way people were buying and changing the opportunity for growth and continued opportunity for the organization. That's a very strategic conversation.
So two elements of strategy here. Yes, the one which you just mentioned, Liz, was a very important one, that the business was going to operate in a different way. They now understood that digital is just not IT. Business also has to change its ways, become digital, have a dedicated team. Typically in the retail world, we would call them merchandisers, but now in the automotive world also, these people came in who will take care of the assets. Now create those assets and make sure that the tool gives them the flexibility of using, uploading those assets, with the comfort of its click, drag, drop, and it works. The other element which came, and it was, I would say, it, it was a promise which HCL made us. I was initially worried, but we said, no, we are working with a strong organization. Let's try out. In that single AKS installation, we are running completely two different approaches. We have the traditional approach, the modular websites, which we have built for our real estate division, which is not headless. And at the same time, we are having this pure API-based headless approach. All on the same platform, all in the same environment. The two businesses don't even realize. The IT team finds it very simple, because in the other world, or what did HCL not support us with this framework? We would have two separate instances of HCL running for that. Means I need double the staff to maintain those environments. I need to charge the business double. that all literally has brought a lot of our expenses and cost to half because of the flexibility which the AKS version of HCL has given to us.
Right. That's excellent. So let me kind of dig into that just a little bit, because you've mentioned the word partnership, and I think this is really important because I think when we talk about these relationships and dynamics, sometimes it's I bought this from them, right? But you keep talking about it as a partnership.
Absolutely.
So how important was that? Because this is a very complex move. You have traditional, you have headless,
right.
You have fast-moving businesses that need to keep operating. How important was a partnership and your confidence not just in the platform, but your confidence in the partnership? How important was that for you?
Yeah, it was really important because we were taking, from an IT perspective, we were taking a big risk here that we are trying out something which is relatively new. It has not been tested or used that much, but because of our association with the tool for a long period of time, and then the people whom we were dealing with, we have a local partner in Dubai, which is GVM, and then we had the likes of Antonio and Herbert, who were actually helping us out in this journey. And while my team was working 24/7, I would also thank a lot for all of the people who have supported from the HCL side. They were also there with us, even the sales guys from 24/7. Anytime I ping Antonio, I know that I will get a response from him, and he will help us out. And so those things helped us, and then build the confidence in where we are taking this from.
It's important that someone's there to pick up the phone, Arjit, right? I mean,
absolutely.
You need someone there who is going to understand the platform. But I also get the sense that they also took the time to understand your business.
It goes both ways, right?
Yeah.
So everyone has to have a context to get it up to that level, right? And that's where. But the good thing is they were so open-minded and they were so welcoming to us. That was something like we cherish a lot, and we have become like friends, right? So so thanks to Antonio. He has given a lot of support from the technical side. Herbert has been really also great help.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, but however, as you said, they needed to understand the approach that you are taking, because it's a platform that can go many different ways, right? They understood that. They understood the problems and they took it forward, and they brought the help from the HCL, the right people from the right time.
Right.
That's where we were able to actually pull it through.
Right.
Right. So the timeline was in the absolute essence, and that was the biggest challenge, right?
So what comes next? Because of this, you guys have come a long way.
Right.
It's an impressive journey that you guys have been on. So, I mean, congratulations to you and the team, truly. But, you don't get to stop. There's no vacation for you.
No.
What comes next? What's next? Like what's next? Let's just take the automotive business. Like what's next there? What are we doing? What am I going to see when I come to Dubai?
So, okay. You're going to see, as it's omni-channel, you're going to see the presence of our Al-Futtaim Automotive in multiple channels. So, yeah, that's what you are.
You're going to make me buy a car when I go to Dubai, aren't you?
Absolutely.
Oh, man.
So, the first thing what we are expecting because we have picked up pace, and as you said, there is no stopping right now. So, 12 websites are coming up in next 6 months.
Wow.
One after another, multiple countries. And it is entire package, right? It is not only like a brochure version.
Right.
It's entire end-to-end scenario. There is finance, there is insurance, there is pre-owned vehicles, there is
That's huge.
trade-ins.
Yeah.
All are
Bringing in all the channel. That's amazing.
Yes, and then the other channel we are talking about. So that is something coming up.
Right.
Which is the stores, the actual stores, and you
See,
get
now you're
to
just teasing me
interact.
with like what you can do with digital in a store, and that's not fair. That's just not. Now I have to come to Dubai. Are we talking like you're going to have digital presence in the stores? You're going to like have the car, and then there's like
Yeah.
Touch screens, pads, kiosks, the whole 9 yards.
Absolutely.
But that's the power of headless and composability, right?
Absolutely.
Is that you guys are thinking of the business journey that your business needs to take and matching that to the customer journey that they're going to have with your content, and you've decoupled that from all the different presentation layers, and you can dream differently now. And if there is anything that you guys are doing really well, it is dreaming differently. So congratulations again. It's been a pleasure to talk to you both, and thank you both for being here.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it has been amazing.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hi. Thanks for joining me here. Listen, we have had a packed day so far. Lots of stories that we've heard. We have talked about why people need to think about cloud native. We have talked about why people need to think about transformation differently. We have heard a really great transformation story. I kind of feel like we got to wrap this all up in the how. Right? Like, so how do we start getting there? And so that's why I'm putting you two in the hot seat right now. Let's talk about a little program that HCL has put together, a little program that you guys are coming up with, right? It's small, tiny, tiny little thing. But I think it's really cool because I want to emphasize a couple things that we are trying to do things differently, right? So the companies that are coming to HCL are trying to do things differently. They have to be met with something different, right? And so that's where you guys come in with the Customer Experience Studio. Tell me what it is that you guys are doing.
Sure. Well, I think you said it really well as a very good straight lead-in, Liz, that we are approaching things a little bit differently than some other software companies do. And as you've heard a couple of times, we do think that some of our clients should expect more from a software company. And that's where the CX Studio comes in. So there are a number of us. In fact, amongst all of us, there's over 275 years of digital agency and digital consulting experience. And what we look to do, bring those skills to bear for our clients so we can help them get more value more quickly from HCL software.
Okay.
Really uncover opportunities faster so that we can get on top of those, start planning around those, and have some fun while we're at it.
I love that. But so you know that I'm going to have to ask you. I'm going to have to ask you like the kind of like no, I'm not tough. It's like a mean question, but it's not. It's like not a mean girl question. But here's the question. I think a lot of folks are going to be like, oh, it's a customer success team that's going to send me to a design thinking workshop. Like, because that's kind of what happens a lot of times. I'm not going to lie. So convince me I'm wrong.
Well, number one is that we really want to kind of leave people with a product or an asset that is actually going to enable them to make their vision happen within their organization.
So it's not just thinking differently. It's not just saying, hey, imagine what it would be like to be the CFO. No. Right? Because that's a lot of times when people don't know that methodology and they're still doing the workshop, that's kind of where you land.
Yeah, I'd say what we're doing, it is informed by design thinking. So there are elements of that. But there are also things that we've taken from our experience with strategic consulting and things that are core to systems integration. So you really get the harmonization of those three different and usually complementary kinds of disciplines. And we bring them to bear without billable hours and without selling by deliverables.
Right.
So
that's the thing. But I'm just going to assume here that you have like a methodology or a type of, a process that you're going to walk everyone through, right? And we've had a chance to talk about it before, but maybe now's a good time to kind of share with our audience what that methodology is.
Yeah, no, that's a great next point is after we have talked a little bit about what it is. And the methodology, it's nothing magical, but it is something.
I don't get to pray, like fairy dust doesn't get to go on. I was doing that all the time during the panel, like, so I don't get to do that
The
here.
magic is inside the phases of the
inside,
process.
okay, good,
unfortunately, it's manifested deeply within there. But no, it's three steps that we do. In each of those steps, though, we do look for chances to bring to bear things that we have gleaned from design thinking, from strategy consulting, from systems integration to come through. But we start just with the opportunity and then get into synthesizing things from different inputs, different perspectives, anchoring back to that business case, the sets of opportunities and pain points that we've identified. And then where this deviates from play CFO for a day in design thinking is with the outcomes. Because if our clients are going to get more value more quickly from HCL software, there have to be tangible artifacts that guide them there.
Yeah.
And we'll explore those in greater
Yeah.
detail as well.
Totally.
Terrific.
We're not leaving people like holding a bag of
Right, like here's your workshop paper.
of fairy dust.
Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
right. Okay, so I want to double tap into opportunity just really quickly here,
Yeah.
right? Because I think a lot of times when people, say, okay, we're going to help you realize the opportunity, and they're like, my opportunity is I got to grow. Like, like my opportunity, or they think in this kind of narrow window of, okay, the challenge I have is I have to engage in digital transformation, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So how do you start to think about that differently, right?
So we have a bunch of methods to depending on the client's, composition, nature, or whatever, we have a bunch of methods that help kind of draw that out and help us kind of frame up the opportunity. First of all, the first method is loyalty loop. And the loyalty loop basically is a method for us to kind of evaluate a user experience and break it down into different phases. And within those phases, we actually dive deeper based upon the user type to really understand kind of the moments that matter to those particular users. So we're talking about a full life cycle, and it doesn't matter if it's a B2B, B2E, B2C situation.
Right.
Our cycle basically maps to it. But when we zoom in on those different phases, we can really understand those moments that really kind of, if you deliver at that point in time, you'll start accruing kind of the kind of trust that we've been talking about all day.
That currency that keeps coming back. And I like that it's a loop. So I like that you're talking about a loop, right?
It's
because
a cycle.
It's that, they need something now. They're going to need something again. It's going to be a different thing. Are you able to come and do that? But you said something earlier that I think is super interesting, right? Because it's that idea of going in and saying, okay, let's talk about this challenge. Let's talk about this opportunity. And sometimes when people don't necessarily know they have the tools or the skills or the mindset or the customer or the opportunity to do something differently, they'll say, oh, we can't do this.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh my gosh, I can't possibly get to loyalty loop. I can't do it. Bye. See you later.
And that's where some of the, applied a little bit differently, but some of the rigor that's inherent in systems integration can be really valuable. So in each of these steps that Aaron was talking about, we will dig in a little bit. So it's a moment that matters. Why does it matter?
Right.
What's the value of it mattering? And then what are the parts of the enterprise that are touching that moment that matters? And then that leads us to exploring what the clients have. And where we've had some success, Liz, is taking something that the clients maybe thought, whether it be data, whether it be existing personas, whether it be advertising campaigns or web analytics, but pulling it together and shaping it into something that can feed some of this plan.
So it's usable.
Yes.
Yeah. I love that, because I think a lot of times people just don't, listen, you can't know what you don't know.
Right. Sure.
Like fundamentally, you can't.
But these companies do know stuff, but they just forgot they knew it. And so we help them mine kind of those diamonds, those gems within their organization through interviews with key stakeholders.
And then you get the binder that was sitting on the shelf from some initiative 3 years ago that has gold in there.
But isn't it also like sometimes they think something is a challenge, but it's actually an opportunity?
Yes.
And you kind of need to be the ones that are like, hey, like that's the opportunity.
That's what the outside point of view kind of brings to the table. And that's where we see like the biggest leaps of kind of, benefit from.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay. Opportunity, awesome. Now that we've identified that, we've seen what we have, we know where to go. Now we start to synthesize differently. Now we start to think differently. What are some of those examples? Because I think a lot of people get stuck in an idea of like, linear, like linear journeys, how do we get there? But you guys are talking about something very different and rethinking kind of a fundamental concept around customer, that being loyalty.
Yeah.
And the concept,
customers and users.
Yeah.
And so we have a framework called loyalty loop, and that kind of has a life cycle kind of stage and stage base that basically allows us to break down the user experience and really kind of dig deep into each one of those stages to uncover those moments that matter for any particular user base. which we create like maybe like 20 per user base.
Okay,
And
so
so
this isn't just one journey. This is
no, these are many
complex.
journeys, many
Okay.
journeys to
Yeah,
Awesome.
and it's got applications for B2B or B2C or internal business to employee.
Okay.
A variety of different use cases.
But you are talking a loop here, which I like, because it's that constant motion of
it's never ending.
right.
You
like
always have to be with your customer, your users, to understand what they need.
I love that. I love that. But it also takes rethinking what we're giving our users, right? Like it takes rethinking not only who they are, but what they need in that moment. You talk about moments that matter. Moments that matter have to be met with something, right? And especially our teams, they want to meet them with something that's like awesome, right? They all want to be a superhero, right? Everyone wants to be. But our customers are kind of also replicating that because they got to be everywhere. They got to, So when you start to talk about a loyalty loop, you're also talking about how you empower people to do that. So what are you talking about
and there are other methods in our repertoire. Basically, one of them is superpowers. I think Gary mentioned them.
Yeah, he mentioned them earlier. That's why I'm like, let's talk about these superpowers.
Right. And superpowers can incarnate in many different ways. So it's kind of a framework and a method to kind of unlock the imagination of our clients. And get them out of thinking kind of like the way they normally do. So we really kind of dig in and say, like, well, if your customer, your user is actually looking to do this, what kind of superpower would enable them to achieve this? And we've come up with like a million different ones, but like
okay, give me a couple. You got to give me a couple.
As an example, like there's like the prototypical one, which is flying or teleportation.
Yes, flying.
And this comes of a result of like maybe the user needs to be in multiple places at a bunch of different times.
Right.
And so like
or the user's footprint is in a bunch of different places at a bunch of different times, right?
Yeah.
We're moving all around. Our customers are moving all around. So if I have to teleport, if I have to fly.
remote presence features.
Right. I love
Link
it.
up directly, and they basically illustrate that particular superpower.
That's awesome.
And there's a bunch of them out there. I mean, there's X-ray vision and other things to that effect. But basically, like, it's a fun kind of exercise that gets people thinking in new ways. That allows us to kind of
that aren't corporate.
No.
That don't get fit in. So that's that I dig this, right? Because you're like, no, you're not thinking about, you fit into the role of the CFO. It's no, your customer wants to, shoot lasers.
or they want to be invisible for whatever reason, and maybe an internal user wants to be invisible when they're using AI and personalization to guide their customers through their experience.
Right. That's a superpower.
So both internal and external kind of users can have that type of superpower or any type of superpower.
But I like that it levels the playing field on that, because when you're thinking about superpowers and superheroes, you can think about the user and you can think about your internal user, your customer, anyone who is touching your digital product.
Yes.
And suddenly can have a superpower. And that's really cool to think through.
And as fancy as an idea as it is, it's very practical when you get down to it. I mean, it gets down to features and functions.
Ultimately, it's a way to think differently about features that can be manifested and then ultimately can be built and delivered and expressed through experiences. Because we did talk a little bit earlier, Liz, about the fact that we don't just want to have another binder that sits on the shelf for 3 years.
So
exactly, and can weigh things down. But no, what we do try to do is work all of this stuff, which can be kind of fun. I mean, Aaron's opened my eyes to different ways of exploration and investigation.
I love it.
But we do want to express something tangible and hand some tangible outcomes to our clients as a result of this acceleration.
That, and I love that, because I think there are exercises where you can ask people to think differently. It's another thing to help people do differently. And that's when you need the thing. You need they need to be able to have something tangible they walk away with.
And that comes to fruition in many different ways. I mean, it can be like a deck to talk to key stakeholders that really tells the story of what you're trying to do. Or it could be a clickable prototype.
Right.
that actually can facilitate a dialogue with your technology team.
But you have a way of actually showing people, like, because like with, I know that we had a chance to talk about this before, like with the insurance industry.
Right.
Right, and have that example of where you're seeing, like, hey, here's the B2C example, here's the B2, you can have all of that, and we can demonstrate it all, where you can see how different people are having different experiences, but in different places, yet it's all leading to that same outcome.
Yeah, and in this particular case, the insurance client like had multiple different, like vastly different user groups, from agent, from customer to kind of adjusters. And what we were trying to do is choreograph all those people around, like creating the best insurance experience for the customers possible. And so like we'll create kind of artifacts that will tell the story, you know, at a pretty high level, but still at a good technical level, so that we can really kind of draw in and start kind of thinking about the architecture, the implementation, but more importantly, like how are we strategically going to choreograph all these different users together?
Right. What I love about this too is that it's not just thinking about a single journey, it's thinking about all the intersection points of how these journeys meld together. And that's what you need to look at when you're talking about something. But it's also something you need to talk about if you're really looking to take advantage of a composable architecture. Right. If you're looking at that cloud native environment, it's not just, hey, I got something up online, right? It's not like, yay, we did it, high five.
Yeah, we got something coherent
that's
touching all of these different user types. And we do get into a reasonable amount of fidelity, because ultimately we do have software products that will be knitted together, supporting these experiences. And what we want to help our clients do is get a jump start on actually implementing these things that will realize some of these benefits that we talked about when we were framing the opportunity.
Yeah, and you said something to me earlier that I thought was really interesting but really important as part of the conversation, that this process is not intended to be a sales pitch. And I think that that is something really important for clients who are looking at this, right? Because I think that, listen, we've all been through the wars before, right? And I think the cynic who's going to sit here and look at this is going to be like, oh, so in other words, you want to sell me 10 different things. You're going to walk me through this really complex architecture, because you're going to then come and tell me, haha, now you need the, now you need the next tier up, haha, But that's not what you guys are talking about. No. That's not what this is.
No, this is, clients that are considering or have already, purchased.
Oh, even considering.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome.
Yeah, early stages. If they're looking, can this help me realize some value? Well, we get into, let's frame what the opportunity is, let's synthesize it, let's explore it in a couple different dimensions and see where it can go.
But that's where your comment about sometimes they don't know what they already have, it's already there, they already have those ideas, they already have the opportunity, that's got to be where it becomes so important. Where the light bulb goes on.
Yeah, and it is about them telling their story to the people that they will help them move forward in their efforts. And so the last thing, so we're doing kind of flows, we're doing prototypes, but we're also doing kind of actual software products, actual software assets. We're providing, we're actually creating those for clients. So not only are we talking to them about their kind of internal processes and their internal capabilities, but we're actually linking our platform capabilities to their processes in, like a in a prototype.
Yeah, so what we're looking to do, maybe at a couple points in this graphic, we would create a targeted prototype that would then extend into a full-on proof of concept. That would go to the client's development team or a third-party partner. Some of these things will get fed even into our product development team if we have something that's good that might be transferable across industries. So just getting in there and trying to wrestle with some of these real problems and real solutions can be virtuous all around.
I mean, hey, that's thinking different right there, right? Is that this loyalty loop is about you and your customers as well, and you guys are living that, which I think is awesome. Okay, so listen, this is awesome, love it. But here's the question that everyone's going to ask, right? Like everyone's sitting, watching the screen. They've been watching for a couple hours. They've just seen this. Where do we go from here? Where do we get started? Because I think that's, if people are ready, they're ready to think differently. They're ready to maybe get some new ideas, get some new journeys, try something new. Yes. So they're ready. Where do we send them?
So So we send them to a place to help them structure some of that thinking and some of that doing.
Right.
So we do have a landing page that has a couple of things on it. It does describe in a little bit further detail some of the process elements that we were discussing here. It has a couple of example outcomes that other clients have achieved from this, and then have the ability just for a little bit of contact information, but then also areas of interest, so that we could understand, getting back to the opportunity areas that they perceive they might have. And that gives us the input to have a conversation.
Right.
And the team is waiting and excited and happy because we're problem solvers at heart. And we just love to dig into kind of your client issues and really kind of find that opportunity.
So, you know, we're gonna send people here, we're gonna get new conversations started, but if there was a question that before everyone goes to this landing page and thinks about and goes and starts the conversation, what question are you hoping that people are kind of asking themselves, talking themselves through, just so that, you know, there's a tangible place to go here? Because I think when we're asking people to think differently, we've got to actually start asking different questions of ourselves.
I mean, so it starts with kind of you kind of asking yourself whether there's an initiative or a thing that you wanted to do that you haven't been able to do for whatever reason. And whatever those blockers are, you know, bringing in a third party to kind of, you know, give you a new angle on that particular kind of initiative, and materials to sell it in.
Right.
I mean, if there's something that you wanted to do, that you just wanted to get done, but haven't for whatever reason, like, we can help.
Yeah, that's a conversation to have. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, the missing piece, or also if there's some initiative that is just floundering a little bit, something that at one point had great promise, but for reasons that
it was the awesome notebook. It was the awesome first notebook.
Yeah, the awesome binder that hasn't fully been realized.
Right.
But no, to Aaron's point, I think the fresh perspective that we can bring from a couple of different disciplines might help them reframe that and get it back on the path to delivering, what was conceived, or maybe even more.
And what they want.
Yeah,
everyone wants to be successful, right? Like no one wakes up in the morning and is like, I'm gonna fail hard today, right? Everyone wants to go and be and achieve that and flex those superpowers. And I think it's great. I love the conversation. Thank you guys both for being here. Thanks for sharing the conversation. This is the place to go. And hopefully next time we'll hear a lot more stories of all those great examples of all those new superpowers. I can't wait. I don't know about you guys. I'm exhausted. That was a lot of great stuff, right? I hope that you are walking away from today's DX Transform energized, heck, re-energized, ready to think differently, act differently, and make transformation happen. On behalf of everyone today, I want to say thank you for sticking with us, and I hope that you've enjoyed being here just as much as I've enjoyed being here with you. So until next time.